Oh, great. That's great. What do you want me to talk about? I don't know.
That's actually pretty close to the real time.
We know we're live.
You're good to go. We're recording.
Good evening. Welcome everybody to the Monday, November 18th meeting of the Greater District. Tonight, let me go around the room here and introduce, starting to my left, our board members. Go ahead.
Sure.
I get it.
I'm Chief Luke. I'm a non-voting member, but I represent the administration, the municipal administration on the Board of Trustees, City of Augusta.
Cecil Munson, Augusta trustee.
Bob Corey, Augusta trustee.
Mike Payne, finance director.
Good evening. Brad Sawyer, an Augusta trustee. Pat Gilbert, guest, an occasional employee of the district.
Kara Walker, Hollowell trustee.
I'm Brian Tarbuck, general manager.
Andy Began, assistant general manager.
And I'm Ken Knight, voting member from City of Augusta. We hadn't come to everybody once. I think for consultants tonight, we have, I think Dustin's here from Meredith, maybe Meredith too, and also Alan Burton is here as well tonight online. Anybody else in the audience? I don't think so. Is it?
Just Randy, I think.
And Randy, great. You can keep track of us like you should. Okay, let's start out. Agenda additions. We're just moving a couple things around. We're going to increase things we're going to talk about. Pat's going to do that right after the rate committee update. And we're going to move the PFAS testing discussion up after the general manager report. Just FYI. Moving on, approval of minutes.
Move to accept and approve.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Rate committee update.
The rate committee did not meet this month in November prior to the meeting because basically it's now in the hands of Brian and Andy and Mike to present their budget is what they need to have done on that stuff. And we're looking forward to that discussion a little bit later in the meeting.
Any questions for Bob or anything? Hearing none, I think this is the Pat Gilbert show coming up here.
Hey guys, how's it going? So what you got in front of you is a grease trap and grease interceptor standards. That's really the genesis of that was section 8.3 of the sewer use ordinance, which says you have to keep grease and oils and fats out of our collection system. And then what this does, we'll refer to this as these are the standards of what you're going to do and how you're going to have to size it, submit it to the district and get approval. So I think years and years ago, there was sort of what we call a FOG program. That's what those agrees. Most municipalities have it. We looked at, I think years and years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, it was kind of a thing here, you know?
Yes.
So we kind of got, I came out of retirement special for this after 4 months. So, what we did was we took a list that Randy had from long ago, and Brian was able to get some stuff from the state, and we cobbled them together along with our own observations moving around town. We had about 150 restaurants, food establishments that we paid a visit to. Couldn't have done it without the interns. There was a lot of value in having those guys this summer because on Tuesdays I'd be like, all right, stack up Mondays and Wednesdays, so we come in and we have appointments and we would just knock out the restaurants and the establishments. So they were valuable. So was Brendan, who works with the district. He came along and was able to introduce him. Ultimately, I think he'll be the person that pays visits to these either yearly or twice a year to these establishments. So we did 150 of them, and that's everything from, rusty lanterns to, those, you see gas stations now, everybody's selling fried chicken, and, nursing homes, all the educational places, UMA, Colby High School, all the schools. So we're able to pretty much hit everybody. It's always kind of moving and evolving. You drive around town and we're like, I don't remember that. That's new. So stuff is always, it's a fluid list with you got. So we went out. awesome GIS guy was able to put together our survey 123 that we use. It's all on our phones. We're able to go in and if you slide a little further on the bottom there, Andy, to the right, so we can get to, nope, on the bar on the bottom. Yeah, right there. Bring it over so we can see the names. We can't. Might take a minute for it to. Yeah, there you go.
Go address and business.
Yeah, so you can pick a name of scroll down a little bit there maybe. Oh, let's do I don't know. Not many of them. I guess we can do Lucky Garden, sure, we can do that. So we make our appointments, we go over, if you see on the right-hand side in that pane, it's got a facility ID, Lucky Garden, where it's located. As you scroll down through, we'll have some images of their interceptors, they triple sinks, those are where you wash, rinse, and do everything, and washers and dishwashers that are going into the system. These are all separate with a grease trap, your bathrooms and the other things, they go out one way. These right here, they come out of the triple sink. That's a grease pig. We'll talk about those later. Everything, not everything goes through your grease trap, just certain component of the system. So on that last picture, like right there, you'll also see on the bottom a little GIS point. So everything's GIS, so you can all the traps, so you know where they are. Most places have a grease pig, which we saw earlier, and that's your frying, your oils, your cooking oils. Generally, those go in there. Places like Baker Commodity will come get those, turn them into biofuel. We definitely don't want that stuff in our system. So we've got a nice setup now. We know where everything is. We know what we've got. We've got pictures of what's going on in the kitchen, of their grease trap, who's cleaning their grease trap, et cetera, et cetera. One thing we did find when doing this is out of 150, there's about 29 that have nothing, anything at all for intercepting greases. So we put together a list of 29 businesses. We have a sample letter that's going to go out to everybody, giving them a reasonable amount of time to install these devices. Some of them have just been that way for a long time, apparently. We just didn't have anything. So I suspect we'll get some pushback on that. But we'll work with people and try to take a good approach to get them where they need to be, because it's not fair to everybody else who has to do it. Did I forget anything?
Yeah, click on the back to the presentation, Andy. There's an overview slide, or maybe, no, that's right there. But that just summarizes.
That just kind of summarizes where July was when we were really peaking out, because I had my interns just set them up and get them out of the park. So what we'll do now is we're able to meet with everybody. Everybody's got a grease trap. I mean, out of that 30, you've got these businesses, and some of them are. When I thought we were going to lose one of our interns at one of the eateries when we opened the grease trap, it was bad. Yeah, but he did not lose it in the parking lot. And I think what we'll do here is you get these 30, you don't have anything, but everybody's going to get a visit now, yearly or bi-weekly, because they're just not cleaning. They're just not doing what they need to do with their grease traps. I mean, we had one place, can I say a business name? No, it's not.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we thought, how bad can it be? And it was bad. You think, well, they're just making, can I say the product they do? They're a coffee place, right? How bad could their grease trap be? It's unbelievable. But you have a lot of oils and creams and all those kinds of things that get in there. So we were like, you need to clean that like now. And they were right on it, Julie, on the spot. I came back a few days later.
So the grease trap is plugged, something bypasses is what happens?
Bypasses it, it gets in our system. So what we do is we not only pull the grease trap, take a look at the grease trap outside of the business, and then we look at look at the condition of it, and then we look at our first asset that it hits. And are we getting, and there's some of them that clearly, they're big contributors, because they're just not you know, some of the managers, a lot of them changed, they didn't know where stuff was, so it's really good here, we can go up and go, well, you know, I'll tell you what, it's like right over here. Some of these places turn over a lot, so, really, that's what we're hoping to do is, we've also taken all of these now, we everybody now, 150 areas, like, have a grease shed. So if you're, and it's by pump stations, or if they don't hit a pump station, they're just on gravity all the way to the treatment plant, and they're coded as that, so if pump station 2 is getting an awful lot of grease, we can go in very quickly, sort it by who's done, what businesses are hitting pump station 2, or some of them hit multiples. You know, if you're at the hospital, you're hitting 4 stations. You're hitting 4 stations before you get to the treatment plant. If you're out on the Whitten Road at the Interstate Bowling Alley, that's gravity straight to the treatment plant. But, you know, you don't want to have that either because that, you know, the fogs affect the process at the treatment plant. So I think we'll pick away at it and get a program underway. We looked at a lot of places like York and a lot of other bigger districts that have a good fog program. So that is what we've been up to. I work 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. So it took about 3 or 4 months to do it, but yeah,
I think it's great. I've been here for a while and we've always talked about this kind of thing and never really had ways to, you know, to do some quantification and it affects all rates. So if we're not taking care of it, we have a few rate payers that are affecting everybody. And I like the fact that we now have some real data to talk about. And then it's a matter of being, we always work with everybody, like you said, and we will. And I think a lot of it is just knowledge and communication. So I think most people all want to do the right thing. And sometimes it's just reminding them and doing that. I think that's nothing wrong with that. So it's a great job. I appreciate it. Thanks to the interns for all that. I think you guys use them effectively. And I think it puts a good face on the district doing this as well.
And most of the, I think it puts a good face on it. Most of the establishments we went to were very gracious. A couple of them were a little spicy meatballs, but for the overwhelmingly, they were pretty good, cooperative, showing us what's going on. And
Oh, go ahead.
Kat, when did you start this whole project?
It was before the interns, probably May, we started talking about it.
We started talking about this and we started.
That's excellent what you've been able to do in a short period of time. To me, that's a short period of time.
Yeah.
From May to November and that stuff, with all the materials and information you got right there to the touch of the hand where you can get that information brought up and working with those people.
Yep.
Again, like Ken said, I'm very proud of what you guys did.
Well, I think it'll be good. We know we can stay on top of it, keep it where it needs to be. I think it would have been impossible to just do it with, you know, when you didn't say position, you're swamped. You're just not gonna have time to set the stuff up and go out and spend days doing it.
You would never had time to do all those appointments in a day with what we had in the past.
No, we'd have 8, 9, 10 a day. When we do them sometimes. Those were the heavy days, and other ones were hard to get a hold of, and you know.
Geez.
Things like that.
Yeah, I just have a question. Do they incur a cost when they pump the traps?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have, most of what you're gonna see is you're gonna see, AAA, you're gonna see, Baker Commodities does most of the grease tanks. They're just gonna dump that and turn it into biofuels. Pat Jackson does an awful lot of the grease traps, pumps them out. So that's the other thing too. When we met with everybody, we said, you got any records? Most everyone was like, well, no. And we said, well, you see in here in the back of this, there's a form that, for example, Hannaford's. You go to Hannaford's, they've got like a whole bunch of grease traps, because you've got them in the deli department, you've got them here, you got them there, right on the wall, it's right there, Johnny on the spot. Those guys are, the big corporate guys are right on the nugget. Their forms right there, you can look and you go, okay, last Wednesday, Joe cleaned this one out, So, those are the kinds of things, but some of the smaller ones, they don't have some like most of these are big 1,000-gallon devices that are underground. We've also picked up in this, we've also got like your new VIPs or your gas stations or those that have the oil sand separator like VIPs and kind of put it in here with this to look at it to go over to do it, but
Car washes have them.
Car washes have them. So, every time we go out on a mission to do these things, we see another business and we're like, damn, we gotta look at that one too. It's just, what do they do? What's going on with theirs? So, but yeah, it's been a fun project. I enjoy doing
Well,
it.
thanks, Pat, much appreciated.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions? Well, thank you very much for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope you guys are happy with it. I'm gonna go.
What wants to hang around?
Well, no,
Watch it on the TV.
I've never been to a meeting before. Thanks for having me. Are we gonna, will they vote on this? Maybe let's.
No, next meeting, it's all new.
No, and that's fine. That's
We
fine.
do it for December.
Just take a look at it, review it for December, and that way we get some, when we go to send these letters out, and people go, well, what do I do with this? Well, you don't really have, this has been in draft form for 10 years, so we would try to make sure it's current. And just get it on the books, it's a real deal that you guys approve. And away we go. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Pat.
guys. You're welcome, anytime.
Now we'll see. Time.
What's your favorite hanging?
We're still.
Well, the cup's right up there. That's pretty good. I like the cup.
Moving on to what we're doing here. Look at these. Okay, project updates with, Mr. Andy Biggin.
All right, our Kennebec River crossing, just like last meeting, we're down to the last contract 5 to reconfigure piping at our Festival Street Booster. C.H. Stevenson is finishing up a project for us in another area, Turtle Run, and they're going to jump on this. So hoping to see them, early December. We have a fiber meeting this week, Wednesday, with GoNet Speed to begin discussions on how they would use that infrastructure under the river, the conduits and stuff. And they're going to start working up what a lease arrangement would look like, what, associated costs would go with building out that infrastructure. And then we can start the conversation to see, what we do with it. So that's happening, and we're hoping to figure some of it out or get the conversation rolling on Wednesday. Front Street, as you guys know, it's moving right along. This is a picture of the sheets going into the ground. Today, they were being pulled back out because we already have the wet well in. The hole was dug, it was about 30 feet deep. They put the wet well in, they backfilled it, they tested it, and everything worked out well. So they're starting to demobilize the crane. They'll be working on setting the valve and metering pit just outside the station in the coming weeks, and start fusing the high-density polyethylene piping for the force main up the rail trail. So the rail trail will be closed for most of the winter, actually, through that from IF&W down on Front Street right up to the underneath Memorial Bridge. We worked with the city and rail trail folks. Phil Garwood is, I think, the current board chair for that group right now. So that went well. We kept them in the loop, and we continue to keep everybody in the loop. That was, driving the sheets was pretty noisy, so imagine some of those buildings were rattled a little bit, but it's going well so far. Turtle Run, C.H. Stevenson is trying to demob this site. They have paving remaining right now, and one more cross-country service that goes up to the auction place out there. So that's the red line off to the right. They're going to be working on that. So Island Park Road, they're box cutting this week. I think they started it late last week, and they hope to get paving in by Wednesday. So we're coming to a close soon. Riverside Drive, we demobbed the pilot unit, and we're waiting for the report. So Blue Leaf will be summarizing that. Hummingbird Lane, that project it's all designed, it's all in plan. We're trying to get that out by the end of the month for bid. So that'll be a 2025 project in the spring. And really impressed with the work on this project as well. The Bangor Street relining, we got over 3 miles of pipe relined this year. And just, if I project $450 a foot on 3 miles, you're over $7 million to do this work that we did for $1 million. And
We need to make sure people know I hope we put that up. We have news communication, make a note of that because that's a huge deal. You guys doing that.
So yeah, Israel Pulpit, he leads that crew. We're now up to 3 people. When we started, it was just Israel, and we grabbed a guy off the road crew to, help him run the CCTV truck. And now we're getting contracts spun around, and we're doing a lot more work. So it's great. We bought an epoxy coating trailer last year. So I wanted to show you guys the manhole. So the photo on the right is the brick, and that's what it looked like after we cleaned it. So this looked way messier before we got a hold of it, but we cleaned it, and you can see the unevenness of the brickwork, and then some of it starts to fall apart. Then we've got a brick shelf down bottom, and then they go in, they recoat it with epoxy and make it watertight essentially from the inside. So it's like negative sidewalk proofing. So they're trying to do this to all the manholes that need it. Whenever we hit a lining work, they follow right behind it with coating of manholes.
It really does help with I&I and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think are we the only people in Maine that do that on our own?
I think we're the only ones that self-perform the epoxy coating.
Which is sweet because then we can just do it when we need to. I forget how much money it costs to do it, but before we got the equipment, we couldn't afford to have it done. It was so expensive.
Yeah.
So now we can just do it, and we measure the labor cost, equipment cost, and chemical cost, and it's way less because there's no profit. So
I think it's another thing we need to promote because
Yeah.
things like that we're innovative in doing, and even though it was expensive to do hire, we were able to do it, make sense of it, and do some numbers and buy some equipment up front, which I remember those discussions.
Yep.
And it's really paying off. I mean, we gotta talk about that.
Well, a couple of these manholes will cost you if we hired it out, it'd be like $20,000 just to get a couple. And we bought a whole epoxy trailer with a generator and an epoxy product for $60,000 last year. So, we're still trying to use up that
Good.
product.
What's an estimate on the life cycle of one of those after you guys hit it, before you have to go back and do it again? Is that a good guess, or is the tech not better on that?
20, 30 years, 30 years probably.
It would be good for, I would say at least 30, it'd be 30 to 50.
How often would you be back there with those other brick manholes cleaning them? In between, would it be less than 30 years?
Well, the old way, Ken, you would trowel on a cementitious product, or you would spray it on, and then trowel it, and then there's other crack injection products. So it looks like a grease fitting that you drill in, and you inject this product, and it finds the water on the outside of the structure, and it seals that off. So, but yeah, we used to get manholes waterproofed for, I think it's like $500 a manhole, but the guy would have to come back the following year and seal them up again, and it just wasn't a permanent fix. So we've been doing a little different. So we have ones that we did on trunk line 1 back in 2011, I believe, and those still look brand new. The nice thing is they wash off easy. If we go do maintenance out there, it's a nice smooth coating system, and it doesn't grow roots. The manholes I showed you, that was on Penobscot Street. So earlier, a few months ago, we had a root ball that came right to the surface in the manholes. So the roots were just growing right through, and we had a massive blockage. So that product seals off, inhibits the ability for that vegetation to grow.
And we did have a Clean Water Act violation that we had to report to DEP because of that, because the root ball was so huge, it created the ability to surcharge wastewater to the environment untreated, which is not okay. So that whole system has been relined and sprayed in a matter of 3 or 4 months since we discovered it. So if we had to hire an engineering firm to go do that, bid it out, find out what people would do, we'd still be waiting on results. So the nice thing about this is we could pivot quickly, and
That's another thing, it saves a lot of fines and, could be, and add and the time if we go, and the more stuff we have in the environment with that, again, another cost.
yeah, it's good.
So Berks and St. Catherine, we're working with the city's consultant, VHB, to get our utilities laid out on their road design plans. we're about halfway through that design process now, so that'll be bidding out this winter. And then trunk line 2 and 4 upgrades, we're trying to consolidate the 2 stations out in Manchester. And I just wanted to, I don't know if you can see the graphic that well on the screen, but that red line that runs from west to east to the bottom of the screen, that's Manchester into Hollowell. So there's about 11,000 feet of force main, and that's pumped pipe flow through a pressure main. And then gravity, we have another 7,300 feet. So yeah, we have, over 3 miles anyway, plus. And then we have another 2,400 feet in town. So we're trying to connect a station on 202 by, is it A&J Motors? It's our trunk line 2 station, and run it through the golf course down to trunk line 4, which is right on golf course property. So we're meeting with the golf course actually this week to try to work out a plan of attack, if they allow us to go across their fairways, because that's not a fun process for them to see that dug up. What would that look like? Do we have the directional drill? Can it be done at all? So we've at least started that conversation with them so we can kick off the environmental permitting and survey.
Is it possible to do that sort of, I mean, it's going to be a tough one going to a golf course, but it would be a way to do that kind of not in season and.
Yeah, right through the winter is what we.
Because at the end of the day, it's going to be more as crow flies to get there, right? Versus going all around and.
All the contractors we work with would be happy to do cross-country work off-season. And then we would likely just reimburse the golf course for them to rehab the surface, because we started working the scenario out, what are your layers? What do you need put back? And it's kind of artwork for them. They spend a lot of finicky time, getting it just the way they want it. And this is going to be a blazed path right through perfect, material, and it won't look the same when it gets put back together. So they'll have to keep, doing a little bit of maintenance to it to keep it to their standards. But anyway, they were receptive to the idea, and we're trying to get through that. We do have 4 other alternate paths. One would be going down Pond Road from 202 instead. We have a hill we have to get over, and then a siphon that we have to do. So an inverted siphon and a regular siphon. A little more complicated, but still doable, more expensive. Probably adds $1 million to the route. So that's the number on the page.
Yep.
The plant updates, kudos to John and his crew. They did they revetted one of our molecular sieves in our PSA system. So that's our pulse swing absorption system. We create oxygen. These molecular sieves strip the nitrogen out of the air under pressure with giant compressors. So the media inside, it was fractured, and we had to take it offline and replace it. So that was self-performed. Our crew just decided, you know what, we're going to try this ourselves, and they did a great job. So good success story there. And we're getting close to our secondary clarifier number 3 upgrade. As you guys know, we did that out a long time ago. The equipment looks like it's going to come before the end of November. So hopefully we're targeting, sometime in December to start that work. So those are the big changes there. And this is just a picture of the clarifier. So the photo, in the kind of middle top of the page is the bridge that goes across. That's going to get new structural support. And then the photo down below is the drive, the lower photo. It's, it already came apart. It's separated, base plate separated from the drive unit because it spins a giant rotating assembly. So it's got a lot of torque on it. Low horsepower, low speed, high torque. So yeah, we're all ready to pull the trigger on that one.
There's a huge difference in bids there.
There is, yeah. And like we reported at previous meetings, we did some homework on Northeast Earth Mechanics, and we've never used them, but they they come highly recommended.
Are they a Maine-based company?
New Hampshire. Yeah. Yeah, and which is great because, it used to be Pentacorp and they spun off T-Buck and Apex, both. So these guys are kind of from the same area. They all compete on the same work and, and they know what they're doing. They had a similar profile for their company in the wastewater municipal sectors. So, and that's all I had.
Any questions for Andy on the products? Hearing none, let's move on to Brian and the general manager board.
This will be a,
Our lack of.
I know it'll be pretty short this month. I go back to my calendar. I was looking at all the great achievements and everything I did between the October and November meeting. It was pretty limited, I have to say, but we did everybody else did a lot of work, so I figured that counts for something. Trying to keep everybody moving in the right direction, and that's working reasonably well. So it's been a good year, honestly. So I want to report, I think, in December. Speaking of December, we have a few policies to go over. One of them has to do with flat rate customers. It's an issue that's come up in Manchester. So part of what we spent our last month doing is talking to Manchester Sanitary District and looking at how they bill their flat rate customers, and is there a potential for us to bill some of their customers for them so they're not in that business anymore as they have folks that retire. So we're helping that out. But in the meantime, we got introspective in our own policies to say if we have a new customer who's not connected to a drinking water system, how would we bill them? So I'll bring a set of standards for you to consider in December. An ongoing issue that we have with a contractor in town is work that's been done that doesn't meet city standards. When you work on a drinking water, sewer, stormwater project under a city street or right away, we have to take that permit out, even if we're not doing the work, even if we can't supervise the people doing the work because they're hired by a private entity. So you recall, maybe, was it a year and a half ago in the spring or summer, downtown Water Street, there was a lot of traffic, a big kerfuffle down there where a contractor was trying to do some drinking water work. They're hired by a customer to do the work, but they weren't experienced. And as a result, it took ages and ages and ages, and we finally had to intervene at the end and clean up, and it cost the customer a lot of money, and it was unfortunate. So we're in a situation similar to that now. So we want to look hard at how that permitting process works, particularly for both DOT and Hallwell and the city of Augusta here in Augusta, to make sure that we restore the streets to proper condition. There's nothing more frustrating for somebody to drive over a bunch of crappy patches in the road. So it's incumbent upon us to return those to good condition. And we want to do that. But it is difficult when we don't hire the contractor. We say, you got to do this. They ignore us. We have to own it at the end anyway. So one of the conditions that we're considering is to put require bonds on all these contractors so that when they do the work, it's just like when they're doing a huge project, but it's just a smaller bond. What that means is that if they walk away, they fold, or they do a poor job that's not accepted by the city, that we can go to the bonding company, get that money, perform the work, and make sure it satisfies the agreement. So we're trying to do it such that it protects the owner who's paying the freight, protects the city of Augusta, who were there at their leisure, basically, or their permission. And it also protects us, so we're not doing work over and over again. So it provides some incentive.
And we're not going to double charge. I know it's not, but it seems to appear that way, and it kind of helps a little bit.
Yeah.
I know it's tough to sometimes that bonding thing is a challenge, but probably in this case it might be one of the.
Part of our theory is that because it's a challenge, it might help us ensure that the people doing the work are more
Might
qualified.
weed out people that are.
Yeah, if you can't get a bond, maybe it's a reason you're not working the road to begin with, right? So that helps pre-qualify.
I agree. The bonding issue is a good thing to have because it keeps the contractors in line. The good ones don't have a problem with it. They see every day where they're going. It guarantees the work gets done. It guarantees it gets paid. They pay a small premium up front, and if they don't have to use it, they don't use it. And the same thing. The plain in City of Augusta, whenever we have anything to do with solar, we require all the work that has to be done at the end to decommission that thing. We require a bond. Right to credit the state that it's covered. So the city doesn't have to do that, but it can have in place. So I think it's a very good issue, and most companies construction companies are used to it.
Pat Gilbert did a great job explaining fats, oils, and grease. We have a policy we'll consider. We're gonna pick through that one last time and bring it for you for approval. Each of those discussions should be fairly short in December with everyone along December meeting, holidays and whatnot, but maybe stuff we want to get over to the end zone. More important, thanks again for 21 years of service. That's a long time. It goes fast, and I don't know how the time goes as quickly as it has, but just from my
Became a
perspective.
mission, apparently.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for doing this work. It's important, and it goes to all you guys. This is thankless work being on some of these boards and having to raise rates. It's difficult to look friends and neighbors in the eye and explain why we're doing it for something that looks like, well, how can it be that difficult? Water flows downhill.
I think it makes it easy because of the last years and the great boards that I've had. I mean, that's what makes that the number of, first 10 might have been a discussion. But
Yeah, we get our days.
Could, just from the, fog policy, and you said you're gonna go back through it, if there are significant changes.
Please look at that. Yes.
Well, I was gonna say, we're gonna look at this. If you have significant changes,
We can.
you just do a one sheet of what they are, so, okay.
Yep, and if there's a lot, and if nobody's comfortable signing off in December, no, we're not in any big rush to do this. It's important that we have a policy that's effective and makes sense so that when we go to enforce it, that people understand that it's vetted and they come and talk to you and say, I can't believe you guys are making me do this. You've been doing the same thing for 30 years and put grease in the system. You can't do it forever, so we need a plan for you to stop doing that. So that's all we're looking at.
Well, I think also it goes along with what Ken brought up before, is we need to get this out to the public on newsletters and everything else, all the things that you guys have done and doing on this stuff. You're going in and getting a study done that hasn't been done for a long time, and it becomes very more transparent to why you're doing this stuff, how you're trying to save the ratepayers' money, how you're moving this district forward, and how this keeps us the #1 district in the state. And it's still standing what you guys are doing, and the public needs to know that. I think the articles that Meredith putting out in the newsletters and stuff, highlighting people like Pat and everybody else who are coming in and do that stuff. It's something that needs to be done. This is our district. These are our employees. We're proud of them.
Yep. Good people. Speaking of good people, Lee Cumber, 32 years. I don't know if anybody doesn't know Lee. I think you guys probably all met Lee, but he is a character's character. His dad was also a wastewater guy. His brother's a wastewater guy out in Air Force Base in Montana somewhere. So he's been with us for 32 years. Randy is on the call, I think, and she would say it feels like 50, but only 32 years. He's an absolute character, great storyteller, whistles while he works literally all the time to Randy's chagrin. But wish I could clone him. It's awesome. He always goes and hikes mountains by himself in the middle of the winter. Nobody knows where he's going, just, puts the things on his boots and off he goes. He's making noise about doing a triathlon next year. He's just a piece of work. But we're very lucky to have Lee when he retires. It'll be a sad day, but also a heck of a party. So we're glad he's sticking with us.
Okay, anything else on general manager?
The next up, if you want to take the PFAS now, we can.
Yeah, let's do PFAS.
This is a big inhale, exhale on this one. So as you know, we've been testing for PFAS for quite a while now. The most recent test, or the first test we've had that exceeds the sum of 6 numbers that are set by the state of Maine. So in the past, the most recent sampling that we had that was even close to this, I think it was 17 parts per trillion in 2022. We had some other levels, 15 and 16 in 2021 with individual well sampling. So up until this sample, we haven't had anything that exceeded any of the existing state standards, which looks at 6 different analytes of PFAS. As you know, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of these so-called forever chemicals, and the state was most concerned about these 6 in particular.
So is it drought on our friend this year?
Yeah, I think 2 things that strike me as being different. One is that, as you can see, I think you can see on the screen, the method on the far right went from 537.1 to 533. Is that method more or less sensitive? I don't know. If you looked at it and all things being equal and looked at the results, things that are ND, which means no detect, are also kind of no detect when you see less than 2. But PFHXS and PFHPA both went from no detect to 2.4 and 3.74. So something's there that wasn't there before. Is that the method? I certainly don't know. Your other point about the fact that we are in a drought condition right now is that we believe that the river influences those wells and that the PFAS is coming from the river, not from upstream like you might ordinarily think. This makes sense because we know that other water utilities and similar system with similar sand and gravel aquifers located near rivers see the same kind of thing. And so it's also borne out by the fact that you look at the top row triangle station is over by Bond Brook and the interstate. And you notice that's non-detect right across the board. And that's not near the river. So we're running kind of our own empirical experiment here to suggest that rivers are source of contamination. So what do? Hit the next
So
slide.
Brian, is it also true that for the last, I mean, the federal government allowed something to put on and maybe cause some of these, whatever, but like for years, the thing was 70 parts per trillion, right? So none of this stuff would ever show up.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
When we looked at, was it 2015, the wells went online, Riverside, I'm trying to think of.
Yep, might have been like 20.
So that was only 9-10 years ago, right? So we all celebrated having a nice new well field. We acquired some property at great expense, installed the wells on a dead end line. A lot of good tactical reasons to do that. Water quality was very good, with the exception of hardness, but it's pretty close to what we saw on this set, so we could tolerate it. Just a scant 10 years later, we find these new chemicals in the water. People rush to regulate them, and there they are. And there's no good way to get rid of them, short of installing filtration. And he mentioned in one of the prior slides that Blue Leaf just finished up with all their piloting. Piloting just means taking a little cylinder of material, you put water through it, and that little cylinder represents a certain flow rate, the same kind of breakthrough or filtration runs you'd get with a really, really big filter. So we're going to look at that data, and based on that, we'll know whether or not it makes sense for us to try to spend the money to filter out the PFAS, and then it'll be nice and clean at the end. Or, geez, it's going to be so expensive, it's not worth it, which would be very painful for me professionally to know how much time and effort we invested into those wells, only to turn them off because it's so much more expensive now to treat it. Life cycle costs for the wells are predominantly the media, the stuff that you try to force the water through, that everything, all the PFAS sticks to that stuff. And once it starts to come out the bottom, then you have to turn it off, get the stuff out, put new stuff in.
So how do you deal with these wells? So the wells were put in because we wanted drinking water on both sides. But what about safety? I mean, we have these wells in for safety as well, for fire protection, right?
Yeah, we can do it. I mean, prior to installing the wells in 2015, we ran from 2004 to 2014, so about a decade on just the 3 wells on the west side of the river.
Or something that broke, we'd be through.
Correct, yeah, and we've mitigated that too. We have an underwater river crossing over here by I call it the low bridge, and now we just have the brand new crossing that we put just south of the tall bridge. So we have a couple of river crossings. So the risk of a failure there is not zero, but it's pretty small. And we'd be okay to run that. The risk that we face now, of course,
I
is
forgot about the second one we had.
Yeah. In a drought condition, like we're experiencing now, that can be a problem because the water from upstream in the watershed just doesn't fill up as much, and you can watch the water table drop over time. But in New England, it always comes back very quickly when we get a lot of rain. But this has been exceptionally dry. Right now, our flow rates are really low. It's not July, so we're not feeling it too bad. And we've got the wells on the east side supplying about a third of our water right now.
But
So basically, and I'm hearing correctly, the rain, the moisture, and everything else plays a lot to do with it. Because in the spring of 2024, we had an abundance of rain. We were way over all droughts went away.
Yeah.
So we had all kinds of it, which is out of the norm for spring. Now in the fall, we're way out of the norm again because we're not getting the moisture.
Right.
And that stuff. So what I'm hearing, it depends on what time of the year you test this thing, on how this is going to come out.
I think a little bit, yeah. I
no
think you're
snowfall,
absolutely,
we've had no snowfall, but we're in run
Right.
like we normally do.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that the two things, perhaps the method change is more sensitive. I couldn't answer that question for you sitting here today. And secondly, we know that, and unfortunately Keith Taylor isn't here to explain this in a better way, but we know that cone of influence that's on the well expands. So the well has to, if you will, reach further out to get more water to replenish it. So I think that's exactly what's happening. Instead of getting that water from uphill, it's getting more from the river, and it's just enough to get us over 20 parts per trillion.
Or 8 to 10 inches low on annual rainfall right now.
And in May, we were way over 3 or 4 to 6 inches above where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Where were we back when we had that water infusion in the spring? What was PFA level up there? What was it?
Go back a slide if you would.
Yeah,
So if you look at the most recent regulatory sampling we have for that station is March 2023.
yeah.
So that would be a springtime
Right,
condition, and we showed the sum of 6 was about 8. So one of those 6 analytes was above the 4 part per trillion that the federal government is talking about. So when we talked a few months ago, we said we'd have to potentially install filters for 660 parts per quadrillion because that was our exceedance. Now this exceedance puts us over the existing state level, which is a different kettle of fish.
If we,
That, right.
yeah,
You're done.
continue on.
Yeah.
If you were to keep the wells online, can you monitor the more real time as to where we're at?
Yeah.
If we go with a live well,
Mhm.
and given this kind of circumstance, we could shut the wells down
Mhm.
during those periods when they go too high.
Yeah, the trick is you can monitor the wells, but you really need to monitor them as they're operating,
Yeah.
right? So, because of that cone of, if we turn off the wells, then the cone kind of shrinks up and we're not getting the same kind of representative water quality.
So that's.
To more directly answer your question, we can measure the levels of PFAS in the water only when we're running the wells. And a representative sample is best, like we had for our recent blue leaf piloting was perfect. We were running the wells for a long time. That blue leaf pilot really represents what we expect to see in normal operating conditions. So.
Well, I'm just looking at it in terms of, we've got money invested in the wells,
Mhm.
and we can maybe take care of the PFASs rather than totally abandon it.
Well, on the next slide, we have a couple different options to consider along with the recommendations. So, one consideration is we can do some more testing to determine whether or not this 23 is really an anomaly. And usually it's around 15 or 16, which is below 20. Is that the same level of problem as being over 20? No, it's not, but it still shows that PFAS is in the drinking water.
Yeah, they may be there, but we can filter them, correct, if they're low enough.
We can filter it even if it's much higher. The bottom line is that we can't get that level down to 0 or no detect without filtration.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Right.
From a regulatory standpoint, if we retest and come back below 20, does the one hot test from the state perspective put us on any sort of accelerated compliance schedule? Or if we test, I don't care about going from manual testing to quarterly, but does it change our plans moving forward?
I don't think so, because let's say the state said tomorrow, I got a letter that says you have to turn the well off, or if you have to operate, let's say we didn't have any other wells, you need to install treatment fast as you can. I don't know how fast that would be, 2 years.
One could argue you are already moving with deliberate haste
Absolutely.
to get treatment in. So these things don't happen overnight.
But if the new standard is 4.
Mhm.
Get that somewhere.
For any one of those analytes, right?
Yeah, we got a problem.
Yeah.
We already had a problem.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So the
Yeah.
trick is now that it's over 20, you have 2 options. You can continue to operate the east side wells like you have before and take some more tests to see just what that level's doing, to Cecil's point. We can't monitor it in real time with like pH and chlorine residual, but we can take tests quarterly, monthly, every 2 weeks, and then plot a curve to see if there's some influence. The question then becomes, in the meantime, will the state continue to allow us to do that even though we're exceeding that 20 parts per trillion? Having worked at the same agency that's giving us these, this feedback now, I can say probably not. At some point, they say, if you have another option, you ought to pursue it. So.
Well,
Okay, you're recommending that we stop operating east side wells. Stopping them when?
Soon as we can. I mean, we can stop tomorrow, the next day. We want to probably spin down some chemicals that are in there, but I think for where we're at, to Brad's point in particular, is that we are moving forward with analyzing what's in the water. We have an option that doesn't have PFAS in it. We've got the data that we need for the Blue Leaf pilot testing. So if this was 6 months ago, we were still doing pilot testing, I'd say, I think we got to run this until the pilot testing is over. When the pilot testing is over, we have 2 pipes underneath the river. We can do this. I don't want to do this from the perspective of abandoning a source of water on the east side that's on a dead end that pushes all the way out to Togus. That does have drinking water benefits, but at the same time, I'm reluctant to provide drinking water that exceeds that PFAS standard when there's a lot of people that are very concerned about that level.
So basically, moving forward on this thing, recommending that shutting them down now, and you are taking the steps needed to continue your due diligence in an expedited manner. And if you need it, you could always come back and turn them back on.
Correct.
So question comes back, are you asking that we say, yes, you should shut the east side wells down?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think ultimately it's my decision because I'm the licensed operator and general manager and all. But it's important to have that feedback and that discussion at the board level, because this is an exceedance. This is something that could very well make the press, and it's something we'll have to talk to ratepayers about. I think right now we have a good position to explain to the ratepayers that this is a recent test. We found the results. I talked to the state on Friday about what they want to do. We have a meeting on Monday. We're moving with 2 haste with the other sampling on Blue Leaf. And then we need to look at that to see, can we get the grant funding needed so that we can install treatment? And
basically, you're just giving us up to date on what's happening out here. So, and I appreciate that. And I think we as a board appreciate that information. And I feel what you're getting paid for is what you're doing right there. And it should be your decision for doing it. And all you're doing is explaining why you're going to move that way. I'm more in favor, just continue moving the direction you believe is the right way for us right now.
oh yeah.
Sorry, I just, as we had gone through this, I have 3 or 4 that I'm just gonna pepper you with, if that's okay.
great.
When was this sample taken?
I think go back up a slide. Was on, November 4th.
Okay, and so we're 2 weeks past that.
Almost exactly.
Have we taken another sample?
No, because when we took that sample, got the results back, it was close enough that the state, I knew, was going to reach out to us. So I've been kind of monitoring that. The state said, do you want to take more samples? And I said, based on the fact that we had a 17, a 14, a 15, and now a 20, I think we know about where we're at with PFAS levels of the wells.
If we were to turn them off, presumably that's for 4 years, rough figure, until we get full treatment installed over there?
I think if we turn the wells off, then we would want to accelerate our treatment faster than we would have had we not had that exceedance.
Okay.
So I think we could do it a lot faster. The hitch and to get along is permitting.
Yeah.
And then the rest is, fortunately, enough of these systems have been installed in New England that we can look at a dozen of them now and see what other folks did, what we can learn from that, and where we would put it, how we make it work and go. I'm confident we can do this engineering on our own.
If we turn them off tomorrow and heaven forbid, massive fire on the east side, something goes wrong with one or both of the pipes, how quickly can they come back on for the point of fire protection? Is it a matter of minutes? Is it 12
It
hours?
would be, I would say, to meet our drinking water standards, I want to minimally put hypochlorite or bleach chlorine in the system.
Yeah.
But we can do that in a matter of hours if we're in the hurry up offense. The
Okay.
trick is doing it safely.
Yes.
To do it safely, if it's not a weekend, probably 24 hours.
Okay.
Well, yeah, just to back Brian up on that, I mean, we can kick the wells on and get water in the system immediately.
You know,
They do not drink water.
Yes. And that
But
was
if
my,
you want it,
Another whole,
right,
but if something were
Yeah.
to burn and it was get as much
If you
water
need it
as
instantly, it would
possible.
take minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
about an hour.
Last question on that is, say we turn them off, we accelerate, and I hate to be the guy that says this may work in our benefit for funding, terrible thing to say, it's true. Any concern with no water through, at a certain pressure through pipes, creating issues that when we turn water back on, we're gonna have stuff coming off in the pipes, discoloration, tuberculation, that, I mean, you guys know way more about this than I do, but shutting a pipe down for 3 years and then turning it back on sounds like a nightmare.
It can be problematic. We're fortunate that because of the high hardness and high pH we have that's naturally occurring, the
Yeah.
pipes really,
Think of that.
it's interesting because despite the white residue that everybody hates to see, it really does preserve our biggest asset, which
Helps
are
to
our
our
pipes.
hands.
It really does. So we don't have a lot of corrosion in those pipes. So we've had conditions where we've had to change the direction of flow of water, which we're on surface water, created red water problems for us. On groundwater, it's much more forgiving. So if we had to turn the wells back on at some point, let's say in January, there's still no rain, still nothing, and we start to lose a couple of the wells on the west side, and we'd call the drinking water program and explain to them, I'm sorry, but we've got to activate these other wells. No water, some water that with PFAS, we put out an advisory, we do another PFAS test, we communicate that transparently, and we proceed. I think that's the best option we have.
I was just gonna say, it was an absolute headache. When we told people this was a possibility 3 years ago, we were all told we were fear mongering and we weren't. And I hate taking the win on that. Brian's completely right. It's not the utility that has a license, it's individuals. From a single board voice, I hate that it has to happen. I think I'm in support of you taking that and shutting them down. It's that old, when you know better, you do better. So.
Cecil, you got a question?
Well, it was answered, had to do with what happens if we lose other infrastructure real fast. How soon can we get it back up?
I know that, go ahead, Karen.
Well, I just wanted to express my support and the recommendation, if you can provide people with PFAS-free water and just at the base level, I think that's a good idea.
It's about 1 million gallons a day per well that we can do, and our usage is 1.9 roughly.
Yeah,
Is
one
that
point
right?
six-ish, and we're using about a third. So, you know,
We're still, our
yeah.
3 wells are still
we should be,
overkill.
we should be fine, especially in the winter months.
How long can that aquifer over there sit? We had ancient water and we finally got it, so it was kind of good, but, so that's really, so I support whatever I've heard here. I think that if you know better, you do better. I think when I had that conversation last week, and here we are talking about it tonight, I fully support right here tonight, so. I think your recommendation is what we pay you guys for, and I think you're doing the right thing, and
You're absolutely right. The longer those wells are offline, the more groundwater we're gonna see in them. So if they stayed offline for 6 months, we turned them on and we tested for PFAS right away. I suspect the levels would be pretty low because we're not seeing much influence from the river anymore because that groundwater pressure.
we're drawing hard now, it's sucking way more than.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So
So I think you gotta do it, and I think we get support of the board here, but I think the board would, they said we support you guys in what you recommend. You're doing the right thing. He talked to me Friday, we had this conversation, and I kind of felt we, and that's where we were tonight, so very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian?
Well, no,
Go ahead.
it has to do, now, you're gonna rely on grant funding or are we gonna have to go to the ratepayers?
it's a great question, Cecil. we know, can you bring the board up?
Well, I think like
Speed of
Brad
work.
says, this makes it, this may in some ways.
This will help us
Work
get
to
grant.
our advantage, and I think
The
that's
state's
a point
formula
I'll take.
for funding, this is up, this will up our points.
Okay, so you just put a little pressure on it.
The answer to your question is both. Even if Andy can get another 4 million, which is huge, obviously, for a $10 million project, we'll have 8. So that other 2,
Especially if we do the right thing, especially if we
Okay,
do
just
the
put a little
right.
pressure on it.
Andy's already got 4.
We have 4 million secured. We got approval. Our match is $400,000, so 10%.
And you gotta get to 10.
And 8 to 10, I'm guessing, somewhere in there right now, because we haven't really laid out all the full-scale components.
That'll be next week.
Is there any way to amend an IUP application to 5 million?
I submitted another grant application,
Nice.
and so long as there's enough funding to say, yes,
Yeah.
we're gonna get another grant, we'll get another $4 million grant with another 10% match. So that'd be 8 million with our 800.
So we could end up with 2.
Well, plus the matching
Mhm.
funds.
Right.
So say we got 8, we'd have to match 10%, which would be 800,000.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, that's a lot. Was it still about like
Better than
70?
8 million.
Still a hell of a
70,000
deal.
Better than 8 million.
I know.
So it's, it's about $70,000 to borrow $1 million. $70,000 a year to borrow $1 million for 20 years with a state revolving loan fund. We just had elections. No one knows what that's gonna do. I don't know if they'll have more or less money for PFAS remediation. No one can predict that. We know we have 4 million now. We know we have a problem to solve. And 4 million is an awful nice number to have, even if it's still 8. It's better than having 0. We've been there before. So that I can't speculate on that, but I think Brad's absolutely right. This one.
This is America. I think water and quality safety is always.
It's the one thing everybody goes on.
No matter where we talk about. So I think we just have to say, well, that's good. And I think you guys are doing the right thing to keep us in the game, no matter what happens. So excellent, excellent.
And I love when we turn Andy loose.
Yeah.
He was getting bored anyway.
Right.
I
Go find the money.
So, PFAS, anything more on this? Let's move on to financial statements with Mike Payne.
So for the current months of October, revenues in water were about 5.6 million. That's about 24% over budget. A big part of that is to do with, grant for river crossing as well as our rate increases, kicked in a while back. That's about 712,000 above last year. Expenses are 3.4 million. That's about 5% under budget and 369,000 above, last year. Cash flow for water started the month at 3.3 million, 811,000 operating revenue. Expenses 420,000 for O&M and saw CIP of 106. Ended the month at about 3.5 million in cash. Sewer division revenue at 5.4 million. That's about 11% over budget. Same reasons with grant funding, the river crossing, it's well over budget. That's about 835,000 over last year. Expenses are running 4.2 million. That's about 6% under budget and about 280,000 above last year. Okay, cash flow on wastewater side. So beginning cash, it shows a negative, basically waiting for that storm portion that will be reimbursed for the division. Revenue for the month was about 818,000. Expenses 86,000 for O&M and 642 for CIPs, large capital expenses for the month. And the cash at this point is still a negative 541,000 as a month end. Storm division revenue is 3.6 million, about 4% over budget. That's about 111,000 above last year. Expenses are 2.2 million. That's about 13% under budget. And that's about 134,000 below same time last year. Cash, so stormwater, so we started the month at 3.2 million. Operating revenue is about 443,000. Expenses 150, and ended cash at 3.4 million.
Questions or Mike?
Questions on the current financials? Okay, so on the budget, I'll cover kind of the big highlights and then, kind of overall, and we can kind of look at each division after that.
Everybody knows this is, we started the budget early this year. Normally, we would have never, we'd be doing this more in December, so, it's a pretty good year doing this way, and it's not the first time you've seen this. We presented it at a planning session, so we're gonna have the game this year for change, so good job by Mike and somebody.
Okay, so this, table just shows the overall, budget. So you can see each division, on the left, 2024 projections, 2025 proposed budget. So on the water division, you can see that about a 1% drop, in revenue. Sewer is an increase of about 9%. Storms a decrease of 4%. On the expense side, you can see the water's increased by 11%, sewer 7%, and storm 13%. And I'll cover some of those reasons a little bit later on. On the staffing side, this says 3 vacancies, still 2 utility workers and 1 pump station crew member. Our health insurance is going to increase 9%. I think the original budget had 9.4. So I left the 9.4 in there, but 9% is the actual amount. And about 3% just our other benefits. We've built in so far a 5% wage increase. The union contract right now is still up for negotiation, but we've plugged in 5 for now just for budget purposes. And I think we mentioned this last year. What we also do is look at how much a 1% change would be. So it's about $55,000 if we should go 1%, 1%. So it's an easy way to say, if we want to look at what if we do 8, what if we do 2. So something we can think about for the next meeting.
Yep.
Power budget increased 5%. Chemicals at about 8% because we're seeing those increases basically every year. Okay. And can we go ahead and hold it? Don't have one more sheet. Oh, one more? Yeah, I think.
Excellent sheet.
Yeah, that's a real summary. So I've got, the one I've got here has a little bit more detail that backs up that. Do you want, let's see, I think this one? Nope, it would be, if you go back to the regular board folder. Yep.
Might run out of net now, kids.
That's right. Looked at the proposed operating budget, PDF about 4 files down.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, just that for sure. Yep. So that you can see the same table at the top that summarized the revenues and expenses. So the, let's see,
You know, total budget on these.
yeah, can you scroll down just a little bit?
I think you got all those.
Yep.
There you go.
That's part of it. So the, go through the increases here.
And a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, I already covered those. We can go to the next page that has the pie charts. Yep. Yep. So these will be each division. So on the water division, revenues are budgeted at 6.8%. There's about 14% increase in water revenues. Part of that's to do with the rate increase we did last year because we do it halfway through the year. Portion of that will show as increase over last year's. All 3 budgets do not include any potential rate increases we're going to do. So these are built on just 0%. Overall expenses for water are going to increase by about 11%. to 4.7 million. On labor side, so labor makes up about 2.3 million of the total budget. Wages are about 65% of the total labor. Health insurance is about 19%. And as I mentioned, we're budgeting a 9.4% increase in health insurance. As far as the effect on GAUD, employees pay 50% of the health insurance and we pay the other 85%. Dental insurance is budgeted to remain the same. And I mentioned the 3 positions that are currently open. Debt interest, budgeted decreased by 9%, which, usual, over the life of loans that will drop, so that's normal. Other categories, about 12% of the budget, and that's many items like outside contractors, insurance, postage, chemicals. And on the supply side, that, is about 500,000, and that's related to construction supplies, computer supplies, safety supplies, office supplies, heating, fuel, diesel, and gasoline. So large line item there. On the sewer side, so revenues are projected at 7.1 million. Again, that's partly to do with the rate increase we did last year, halfway through. The O&M expenses are increased by about 7% to 5.4 million. Depreciation is about 27%. You can see that labor and fringe are budgeted at 1.8 million, which is about 36% of the total budget. Wages make up about 65% of that total labor. Again, health insurance, so some of these are the same bullets as the other divisions. 9.4% increase in health insurance. Debt interest decrease about by 4%, which is the same with the amortization over the life of the loan. So for the sewer side, budget again is supplies, safety supplies, office supplies, tools, heating, fuel, diesel, and gasoline. So very similar to the other division. And other for this division, so about 20% of the budget. Budgeted to decrease actually by about 1%. And the bulk of these expenses get split with the storm division, 59 to 41%. Stormwater. So stormwater revenues are budgeted about 4.1 million, similar to last year, as there were no rate increase for storm. Overall O&M to increase by about 11% to 4.7 million. Next section is basically the same as the other divisions with the increases in benefits and whatnot. Depreciation is 31% of the total budget. Debt interest has a slight increase by 9%. That was to do with new debt during the year. We are increasing the power budget by about 5%, just to what we're seeing with CMP increases. And other categories, about 13% of the budget. Again, the bulk of these expenses get split 59 to 41 between sewer and storm division. That's kind of the high level view of the O&M budget itself, and we'll go over cash forecasts on that next.
Any questions for Mike so far?
I know it's a lot of stuff.
No, but I think it's good that we're having this discussion like this in November versus waiting till November, that December to have this when the next question is gonna be, okay, vote on it.
Yeah.
So I think this has been very helpful, Brian. I think based on our past years, this will help a lot in December, when we're not doing this big dump at the December meeting and we expect somebody to vote on a budget. Not about rate increases, we're talking about budget.
It gives everybody a chance to review what you have. If you have any questions and everything else, numbers for Mike, or you got questions before next meeting, get to him so we can have those answers when we get to that meeting.
Yeah, the nice thing about seeing that pie charts, you don't have a lot of, as a board, most of the time, you don't have a lot of levers to pull. Essentially the one big lever you have to pull when you look at the pie charts, it's not gonna be depreciation or debt interest, it's gonna be wages. So that's, everything else is kind of out of your control. How much it costs for a Milwaukee M18 battery is not something, or a pickup truck, that that's kind of outside any board's control, but,
Mostly a lot of it is capital projects we can do
Yeah.
and are not do, but there's some realities to that as well too, because not only you can say, well, we're not doing this, but we actually may end up doing some of those, not because they're trying to mess, it just may happen. So that's a tough road to go down too. But thank you for getting this, but
Sure.
keep moving.
Yep, so these are our cash forecast tools that we use. So what we've done is we've built all three divisions on a 0% rate increase, and then we've also just kind of put a 10% rate increase out there for water and sewer, just to see what it looks like, see the effect it has on the year end for cash. So this is one of the zero increases. So this basically includes everything, all the O&M expenses. So this all came from the budget that you already saw. And then in the little bit in the cash flow section down below, that's where we touch on capital projects, pipe replacement, and other capital spending, which is things like equipment, pump station work, anything that's actually not replacing pipe. So this basically this tool is one of the most valuable things. It takes into account everything, not just O&M, things that are non-cash come in and out, so you can at least see them. And then really here, the numbers we really tweak are capital projects that we kind of come up with what we would like to spend for the year. And that's always a moving target. It'll change between now and December, most likely with different information we get. If you want, yeah. So here's water with it. We built that at the very top. You can see a 10% where it says proposed to be 25. Again, it was just a placeholder to show. And it actually doesn't have a huge effect on that ending cash balance. Because the 10% is, of course, a much smaller amount than we did the 30% last year. So this is just to show what it could be if we do 10%.
The one thing that's important that, what Mike and Brian have done on this one, the one numbers you got last month in October, it reflected different numbers at the bottom. It went to 25, 26, needing cash or ongoing cash because of what happened on that line where it shows for the pipe replacement. What he did last time, the one we got last month, it showed for 1 mile. It showed the $3.4 million figure there on that thing. So it's dropped that by that 1.4, 1.5 million on that thing, which affects the cash at the end of it. And basically when we were looking at them in October and before that, we were thinking about recommending a 10% increase on water because of what the need for this going into the year 26 was going to be a drastic drop because he kept the 1 mile cash flow going all the way across. Basically, what this is saying at this point right now is with these numbers, we do not need a 10% increase in water. We don't need it at all on this thing. So basically, we got water, I would say we don't increase, stormwater don't increase, and you keep the sewer. But the pipe replacement is a major one because that's only in the water portions of that thing. So we have a lot more cash, and I think what Mike and Brian will be looking at the same point, you have 3.5 million. We have our reserves are asking for 750,000. That gives you money if you want to do it for additional projects to take place next year, or do you want to set it aside for different things that are out there? So that's something you need to think about. Because if we're not asking for an increase, where do you want to spend that money if you want to spend it at that point? So that's a good thing at that point for the next 30 days to go over.
But just for our new members, is that we used to have this, we've directed management every year to replace a mile of pipe and everything. And finally we realized that we were putting a hell of a burden on them because it wasn't $1 million to do that, it was more like $4 million to do that. So when they come with a budget, they felt compelled to do that. And you go like, geez, we're back right into a huge rate increase. So we said, well, wait a minute, we're doing a lot of pipe replacement based on some of these projects. Aren't we kind of doing that? So we kind of took that mandate out. So this year, I'm not sitting here saying, hey guys, bring us a budget with what we tell you to do. They're actually doing it. We've kind of fixed that last year. And it kind of makes, like Bob said, a lot more interesting. And at some point, we'll get to the point when the next in December where, you know, do we need a rate increase or do we not? I hesitate. I'm not interested in saying tonight what we're going to need or not need, but I think the goal was always to get down to the 3 and 5% range for rate increases every year, because we never did that for a long time and we missed the bubble hugely. Now, if the cash reserves stay different, it convinced me Frank can only one vote on that stuff, but let's pay attention to that. And this year we got a lot of time to think about that, which I think is the best part of it.
When you get to the, we get to capital too, we can talk about some of the projects that got deferred. So for example, on water, they got $33 million worth of need and we'll spend, you know, a couple $1 million. So
I think it's important for new people.
exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, it isn't to say that if somebody said, could you guys spend arbitrarily $3 million a year on water pipe? Could you do it? And it's a great question to ask because there's a lot that goes into it in terms of permitting, in terms of the manpower that we have to try to manage a project like that, to design it, get it out to bid, execute. Is there enough time in the year to do it? Where in the city would we do that? Would it be in Manchester perhaps? You know, so that's another interesting question at the board level to say, well, if you had that kind of money, could you actually even spend it? So it may be that our sweet spot isn't, we couldn't spend $5 million a year and try to manage that work. I just don't see how we could do it. $1 million a year is pretty easy. It's just something in between that we can manage.
Did you say last time in a meeting that there may be potential coming that we could reline water pipe like we relined sewer pipe?
There is.
That would be a huge,
We've
huge
looked,
discussion.
we've looked at that and it doesn't happen much up here. And I'm really reluctant because of a lot of conversation about microplastics these days to put anything that's plastic inside the drinking water pipe at this point, because just kind of reading the proverbial tea leaves, that's going to be the next boogeyman that is going to be really, really hard to get rid of.
If you use pipe for a house.
Keeping that out of the mains that we have is important. Think about your own house and think about copper pipe and think about solder and all the thing. And now how smart we are with the shark pipe into PEX tubing. Well, if PEX tubing is a source of microplastics, is that the next boogeyman, not bed pipe, for example? So I think, you know, reading the tea leaves, microplastics in drinking water are going to be a thing in 5 to 10 years, probably mostly on the customer side, much like lead is, and then we'll address that later on. But so to answer your question, cement relining is a thing. We might be able to do that in certain circumstances, but I'm reluctant to do plastic relining.
Well,
In basically too, with that cash and recognizing the 3.6 million, as now Mike explained to me earlier, one of the things, and Brian brought up a little bit, 800,000 of that 3.6 is money's being carried over for projects that are already set up to go there. So you really have 2.4 or 2.6 million worth of cash. And what Mike has put together for everybody on this thing is the projects that you see in your package. It gives you a list of all the projects. They speak to the amount that's being put together with the budget. It stops at the 2.6 and it stops at the 1.4. So you do have other lists. I know it shows all kinds of things. And what you were talking about, we could spend $40 million and here's all the ones. We stopping right here because that's all the money we had. So that's the one where you can look at. That's where you can look at for moving forward and stuff.
great. Good, Mike. Thank you for that.
So just to show on sewer, so right now, the way we've built the O&M budget and towards the bottom, we've built 1.5 million or so for capital. Any balance for cash would be 786. So it's over the target, but it still would be getting down there and you know, so keeping more of a reserve. Living back to 1.5 million right now for capital projects on the sewer.
That's just showing no increase there, but to meet our 370, we'd have a little increase there, right?
No, at this point, it would be, so that's for 2025, we'd be at 786.
So
So,
for 2026, you would not, it'd be short a little bit because part of that shortness is because you don't show any of the increase on the,
right,
there
like,
is no,
right,
The only
like,
problem I can see is that every time we don't do something and we save money,
Yep.
then we kill ourselves 2 years down the road. And we, you know, and I think Brian said at the same time, we made a great decision once, but it really bit us. Right decision to make at the time, we go back and do the same decision all over again.
Yeah.
So you'll hear from me next
Yep.
month is that zero won't be a number for me.
yeah, and what we do, so, and this is from in previous years, we build O&M budgets on zero. And then we'll
I
talk
appreciate
about,
that.
yeah, as far as the really driving the CIP part if we want to
You're
do
doing exactly what we're
increases, yeah. Yeah, but at this point, we do build it at zero.
what I have to do, and I appreciate that.
Yep, and on the next page, this was just like we talked, we did put in a 10% just to, give another example of how that would, drive the bottom line too.
Thanks.
Storm division, so at this point, storm, because it's been in a good position financially, we've only built it on zero at this point, no increase there.
I think one of the compelling things for rate increases is that what Brian was talking about, some of those projects that might be, if we had it and they could do it, at this point in time, there was no contractor to do it.
Yeah.
So they're different
Right.
situation
Yeah.
today, and they found some new people, obviously, to do some things, so maybe we're in a place because we don't do it, we're gonna do it.
So this, one of the things that we do as far as the cash reserve, Bob mentioned. So our current policy is in green where it says, so for water division, 750,000 and then sewer and storm, 375,000 each. We talked to our auditors last year or 2 years ago, just what a typical, utility or typical business may keep on hand and days cash of 60. So at this point, that yellowish color, you can see that in total, we'd be over the reserve that we want to keep. So this is basically a good thing.
This is an important thing because we hear so whether there's a big discussion. I certainly had it as an ex-city councilor about how we keep reserves. Been here a lot of times, and we kind of base our reserves based on some things we did through the city and this, and we came up with those numbers. We've held to them for the last 15, 20 years here. But last year, I think there was a lot of questions around this. Somebody said, well, what's the real number? The real number is we're shy. So we're gonna have some options to either fix that or not. So Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, because basically, what's in EO is a standard accounting measures. On some businesses, they want to make sure they have a minimum of 60 days to keep the lights on and keep the bills being paid on that. What you'll see when you compare it to these numbers out there, the cash reserve for 2025 on everything you see is both of those are met 100%. And that's with a 0% increase.
Right, so this right here is a board only decision. This is nothing that management is gonna, right, this is a board decision here, so just be aware of that. And this is not where, hey, they haven't brought us the right thing, this is nothing.
And this, so one of the things we've talked about with this, so that the way it was currently set at 750, 375, 375, because that was looked at as a fixed amount, as budgets grow, that doesn't mean much anymore. So as the way this calculates with the 60 days cash on hand, as we grow more and more, that number, the 750, 375, 375, it would be antiquated after even just the increase with this year's budget. Those fixed amounts would need to be based.
So what we got so far is at least we got a green light there, what we're doing. We're not in the gray. If we're in the gray, I have a problem, but I'm in the green, even though I think your good yellow will still do it.
Okay. We just.
And like you said, if we go up, I get.
Yeah, it has to grow with it as far as that reserve.
Right.
And debt schedules, we typically will put these out at least every year or so. Just shows our debt levels, it shows where things will drop off as things move on. This one doesn't have much of a significant drop, really. There's some in 29 and 30. Go to the next. This one is a lot more, a little dramatic. Yeah, little, you can see a huge amount of debt, currently out in 2031. That's where a large amount drops off. So the significant, well, the cash flow, basically not having those huge payments. Still a lot of time between now and then, but at this point, I would drop right off nicely.
Great. The nice thing about that, board wise, is you can see a path now, finally, that in just 6 years, your debt service relative to your total revenue is going to be an awful lot lower. It's going to be a much more comfortable position to be in. The other nice thing about that debt service you're paying on, those are very low interest rates when they were acquired. So some positives there, despite the large numbers that you see now. And sort of how it cripples us in terms of being able to do a whole lot more in terms of borrowing for sewer and stormwater. Like we've talked about, I think drinking water is going to be the biggest problem that we face. We talked about PFAS earlier. We know it's not easy to reline the pipes, so that's an issue. Still, we can reline sewer pipes and stormwater pipes. That's really saving our bacon. Andy said this going to be at $7 million to open cut those and $7 million to replace several miles of pipe this year. So I think this chart sort of foretells our future in sewer and stormwater a little bit, that those costs should kind of ameliorate a little bit. But unfortunately, I do think the water is going to take off as more and more people worry about microplastics in lead and these other things. Will make it harder and harder for us to comply as those rules tighten.
Good, excellent, great presentation. Anybody have any questions here that we haven't talked about? Things to think about for next month, because next month we vote on the budget for 2025. Not the rate, just the budget. But if you vote on a budget and it requires a rate increase, you just understand that. We don't need to, hopefully you didn't explain that. Oh, I have that, ooh, and he has passed.
Yeah.
I don't want to make this yet, good.
I think, one, again, I just want to compliment and thank Brian and Mike and Andy, who've spent a lot of time on putting this stuff together. What I would like to see, if we can, is for the next meeting, is for you guys to come up with, because we know we have some cash, extra cash in there, in the water portion of it. And to expand the list that you have for projects where you can add some on there and think about where you might want to spend that money and what would be best for that during this year on that thing. All right, so, because basically you look at it, you want to try to raise rates on those things. We need to justify where the other dollar is gone.
So are we building too much capital in water? Because that's not a good thing, right?
No, that's why it's only because you cut back on the water.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble by having too much.
Right, well, that's why you want to see what project, what's going to be best for the mains, is for anything else that really needs to be done. On those type of things. So I'd like to hear you guys' recommendation when we can talk about this in December. What you feel we could do with that money and justify to the ratepayers we are actually getting some of this stuff done.
Mike and I are squirming in our seats because you just told Andy that he's got more money to spend.
We love it. We like
We never tell Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, but this town, the same point, for every penny he spends with this, he needs to find 10 times that in grant money.
That's right.
We're doing a good job with grants. So that, everybody's all good with that. So be ready next month. Moving on. New business, no liens. Moving on to policy review. You talk about it.
Yeah, this is basically, I think that should be in your packet. My apologies, of all the packets I've done for the last, since 2007, this has got to be my worst effort. And I apologize for this.
No, it's not the worst.
Is it really? Is it worth really? I was feeling pretty guilty about that. Long and the short of it is we have not updated this policy in a while. This is no changes.
Good.
I move to approve the remote meeting policy.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Great. Okay, moving on, very good degrees. Communications update with either Dustin or Meredith tonight. Anybody get Mr. Dustin?
Evening, everybody. It's just me. All right. I don't know if we actually have this in, do we have it in the slides, the Q3 analytics, website analytics?
Yeah, we can get it pretty fast.
Here, and then I can share mine. Oh, not allowed to share my screen.
They are in the slides.
All right, they're in the slides.
Well, they're in the handout.
No, they're in the handout. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and just go quickly through it because I believe we actually touched upon it in our last meeting. But essentially, all our website report kind of provides the data over, from Q1 to Q3, and we also adjusted it to look at Q3 from last year. Everything is up. So we have, thank you very much. Yeah, so everything is up over quarter over quarter, year over year. So, people are going onto the website, they're engaged with all of the content. All numbers are kind of still proceeding up. And I know that we have our consistent social media to be thankful for that. And I know that earlier in the year, we had a recruitment campaign that also drove a lot of traffic onto the site itself. So yeah, I think if you go drop down 2 more pages just to the executive summary, I can go from there. That's what I'm reading off of. So
There you go.
year over year. So yeah, actually right here is just fine. So for looking over our Q3 analytics, you can kind of see from 2023 to 2024, you know, we're essentially around the same amount, but our sessions are up and our engaged sessions are up in particular. So just small improvements over time as we're doing organic social and getting the word out and getting news out. I know that we have all of our social medias approved and scheduled for the upcoming month, and we're taking in requests like Brian sent us news about the digging and the noise that we were making. So making sure that people are just informed in a timely manner is on the list, and I think that's one of the reasons why our websites are still in good standing. Looking through it, go ahead and drop to the next one. Yeah, you can kind of see here, all of it's just trending upwards, and it's just kind of just a breakdown from July, August, and September. So you can kind of see the numbers over time as people are continuing to keep the same rates that we've been going. If you want to drop to the next page. Yeah, most of our traffic, you know, going for requests for proposals, paying their bills, and the careers page itself. I believe one thing that Lee noted in our list here is rates, since that's one that needs to be identified, is at number 9. So still a decent amount of traffic there. Scroll through. We have a list of organic keywords that people are generally finding us by. So we're keeping a good look on our website analytics, and I believe most of our social pushes people to the sites as well. So overall, things continue just to keep rolling positive, all up from the small communication strategy that we've had throughout the year. Because I know we're kind of getting back on track with everything with our newsletter. I know that we've mentioned a couple of times over being able to communicate some of the great things that are being done. Brian, I think it's in your court for our fall newsletter. So let us know when we're in a good spot for that. And I think we have quite a few articles in there over the station that's being worked on currently, and another item for our talking about lead and some of the other work that was done throughout the year. So let us know when we're in a good spot for that. And I believe we're also working on the December insert that we're going back and forth on as well. But yeah, these are just taking time over to date over time. All of our analytics are going up, which is good.
Excellent. You guys have any questions for Dustin here? I think the one positive note is I think this kind of communications has really helped us over the years. And as we talked about earlier tonight, I think there's a bunch of things here, and I hope, Ryan, we get with Meredith and Dustin to talk about more promotion on some of the things he highlighted here, which are just super important. And especially as we're going into budget season and going to come out with a new budget, which may be extremely good this year for a change as far as rates. You know, they appear to be very minimal, if any, at the economy, which is pretty positive, and it's because of some of this stuff you guys are doing. So,
I noticed you've got, on page, 146, you got Twitter. Is that now X? Is that?
Yes, that is technically X. Yeah, I think that Lee still uses all of the old terminology around it because people still get familiarized by just using Twitter.
Yeah, there's a new one out there. What is it, Blue Sky?
Yeah.
Truth Social, a whole bunch of them.
No, I'm thinking of a new one that's an alternate. Yeah, big, an alternate, Blue Sky. I don't know what that is. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm familiarized with it myself. It's a Twitter alternative. Jack Dorsey, so the original.
One more.
Any other? Go ahead. One more question for you.
Well, it has to do right at the very end. It says contact on LinkedIn as well. Do you have anything on LinkedIn in there?
I believe that there was some LinkedIn utilized during the Q1 for when there was a career push. I I'd have to double check and see, but I believe we're cross posting on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
So I have seen something from our other districts in Maine, mainly the bigger, maybe more like Portland, does LinkedIn a little more than we do, on a more consistent, I don't think they're really consistent, but they do consistent. I think some of the things that we do, like how we upgraded something in the plant, some of those things, they're always promoting some of their people, and sometimes when the people do certain projects, like you just talked about sewer plant, might not be a bad idea to do some of that. And they're doing it for recruitment down the road, basically, and promoting themselves. So I see LinkedIn not so much as the social media where we're taking pretty pictures of ourselves, but more of the things we do and that sort of thing. I think helps. It's out there in people's mind, and that they're looking for those people that are moving around, that sort of thing. So just FYI.
Yeah, and especially one of the things that I discussed with Lee too is considering more cross posting across LinkedIn. You know, a lot of government and a lot of businesses are focused on LinkedIn and are more focused on LinkedIn than Twitter for getting some of the news in their local business communities. So it's a good place to keep face with, you know, all levels of people that we work with.
I mean, it was pretty noticeable when Keith was posting about City of Augusta lately in LinkedIn, and I just think that's a great thing, and I think we should. Oh, but anyways, anybody have any questions for Dustin?
Nope.
Dustin, I think, thank you very much. Don't mean to cut you too short, but we're trying to keep a meeting to an executive session coming up here, so thank you so much. Is that, did we cover everything you needed to?
Yep. The only other update that Meredith let me know is that we updated the website with all the new board pics. Thank you everybody for showing up and being so easy to work with for her to get her photos.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you for coming on board. Nice to have you. Okay, moving on from HR, we're on to HR now, I believe. And it says motion 4. I don't know what that motion is.
There's no,
No, we didn't do a good job tonight.
like I said, I told you, I was just, hit me when I'm down, you killed me.
Maybe Alan's got motion 4 down in Florida.
Is that's him right in the back. You
Is
can
it?
see.
Hi, Alan.
Good evening. We actually did fill one of the utility worker positions, so there's only one opening on that, and we have an opening after the first of the year for a distribution operator. Mike already talked about the health insurance and pricing on that. We have had the first meeting with the union Teamsters, and there'll be others to follow up. And then it's all about communication and feedback loops. So those are the things we're working on.
Anything else for Alan? I think we're gonna talk to Alan in executive session. We're gonna have him on for executive.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So, I think unless anybody got any questions, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna make a motion, I think, to go into executive session.
I moved to enter executive session to discuss negotiations relating to the collective bargaining agreement between Greater Augusta Utility District and the Teamsters Local 340 pursuant to NRS Section 405(6)D.
Second, Bob, any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? We're going to suspend the meeting temporarily while we go into executive session. And thank you all, and we'll ask some people to leave during.
Hey,
Yeah, Dustin, good night.
Good night, Dustin.
Happy Thanksgiving, Justin.
Alan, I'm gonna call you so you can bang out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're on? Okay, back in session here, Greater Augusta, Mr. Sawyer.
Mr. Chair, I move this body stand adjourned.
Wait a second by Fiesel. Any discussion motion? I don't think so. Hearing none, all those in favor? Thank you, everybody, for a great meeting. See you later, Alan.
Was this second?